This is Eric Anderton, and you're listening to Construction Genius, a leadership masterclass. Thomas Edison said that genius is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration. If you're a construction leader, you know all about the perspiration, and this show is all about the 1% inspiration that you can add to your hard work to help you to improve your leadership. Let's do this, was the consensus. Everybody knew we would likely get in a gunfight, but we wanted that gunfight to be on our terms, not the enemy's. With everything ready, we broke out of the building and emerged onto the street, our weapons pointed in all directions, ready for a fight. We quickly moved out and made our way through the streets, covering and moving as a team past Iraqi citizens who stared at us with some surprise. When aggressive men with guns pointed their weapons at them, the locals knew to keep their distance. Anyone who didn't avoided interfering with a heavily armed SEAL squad, and they were certainly looking for trouble. Rapidly, we pushed past parked cars and piles of trash. Threats were everywhere in this urban environment. Every gate, door, and alleyway that we passed, the distant intersections down the street at ground level, and above us from every rooftop, balcony, and upstairs window, each presented the possibility of a well-armed Muj fighter ready to inflict horrible wounds or death upon us. I'm reading today from Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink and Leif Babin, and today we are in Chapter 5, Cover and Move. My name is Eric Anderton. Welcome to Construction Genius, Episode 19, How to Win the Battle Against Silos. Now, the scenario that we're talking about here in the book is taken from 2006, South Central Ramadi during the Iraq War. Leif Babin is the one narrating this situation. He's leading one of two SEAL sniper overwatch teams that are installed in a tactically advantageous building. If you saw that movie, American Sniper, you'll get the idea of that Overwatch team. And what they're doing, these two Overwatch teams are providing cover for a patrol of U.S. and Iraqi troops in a dangerous several block area of Ramadi. Now, the patrol has been extremely successful, and that group of troops has returned to the safety of the U.S. military combat outpost. And now, it's time for the two sniper Overwatch teams that were supporting that main group to return to the base as well. Okay, let's go back to the book. Our tactic, which we trained for, practiced, and utilized, was a fundamental one we called cover and move. Within our sniper Overwatch squad, we had 4 elements of smaller teams. One team covered, their weapons trained on threats, while the other team moved. Then those teams reversed roles. In this way, the teams leapfrogged inbounds, constantly utilizing cover and move to ensure we were prepared to fend off an attack as we maneuvered through the streets. For about 500 meters, the sniper team moved along steadily, making our way back toward the combat outpost. That combat outpost was the main base that they had established. Okay, back to the book. Then, all hell broke loose. Fully automatic gunfire erupted from the rear of the patrol. Insurgent fighters had followed us and heavily engaged us with AK-47s and PKC belt-fed machine guns. Rounds smashed into nearby walls and kicked up dust in the street right at our feet. Immediately, we responded with withering gunfire of our own. Our SEAL machine gunners were an awesome sight to behold, fearlessly laying down fire with deadly accuracy, even as enemy rounds impacted all around them. Our overwhelming fire quickly repulsed the enemy attack, and we continued to a street corner that provided additional cover, moving in a hurry toward our base. Those courageous SEAL machine gunners had provided the cover fire that enabled us to move safely through the maelstrom. Within minutes, we covered the remaining distance to the base and made our way past the Abrams tanks guarding the entrance into the relative safety of the U.S. Army combat outpost. Later in the chapter, Leif Babin goes on to explain, cover and move is the most fundamental tactic, perhaps the only tactic. Put simply, cover and move means teamwork. All elements within the greater team are crucial and must work together to accomplish the mission, mutually supporting one another for that singular purpose. Departments and groups within the team must break down silos, depend on each other, and understand who depends on them. If they forsake this principle and operate independently or work against each other, the results can be catastrophic and impact the overall team's performance. Now, just like in the military, this principle of cover and move or teamwork is vital to the success of a construction organization. And like in the military, this success can be hindered if the leadership of the company allows silos to have a negative impact on the organization. And so that's why we're going to spend some time today talking about how to win the battle against silos. And in this episode, I'm going to explore 3 things. Number 1, the wisdom of silos. So I'm not going to tell you to eliminate silos in your business because there is a wisdom to silos that we have to talk about. The second thing we're going to talk about is the danger of silos. The danger of silos. And then the third thing is how to use teamwork to win the battle against silos. So, what is a silo? Whenever I think of the word silo, I think of those structures that farmers use to store different types of grain. And in the context of a business, what we mean by a silo is an isolated grouping or department that functions to one extent or another independently or apart from other groupings or departments. So before we dive into the 3 things that I wanted to discuss, let's just think about a little bit in terms of what silos exist in a construction operation. On one level, construction is pretty simple, right? You bid the work, you plan the work, you build it, and then you bill it. And you do it again and again and again. But as you think through each one of those clear areas, immediately what pops into mind is a variety of different silos or groupings or departments that naturally exist within a construction company. I can think of 8 just off the top of my head. Number 1, you've got your estimating group. Number 2, you have your project management group. If you're a smaller construction company, those 2 things may run together, but typically those things are separated. Then, of course, you have the field, where the money is made. And within the field, you have different projects and different groups. Then you have the billing department. You have your safety people. You have folks that run equipment. You have folks who run your shop. If you do any fabrication, you have people who run the fabrication end of the business. Of course, you have good old human resources. And then you have your IT department. So those are at least 8 natural silos that exist within almost every single construction company, regardless of size. Other silos that may exist within a construction operation include people. Think about the different types of people you have in your organization. Of course, you have old school versus new school, right? You've got the Generation Z and the millennials, and then you've got your Generation X folks and your baby boomers. And you know that the way the old school folks show up is different than the way the new school folks show up for the most part. And that can create a silo. Then, of course, you have your formally educated folks and your informally educated folks. Right now is graduation season in the United States. Lots of people getting out of college, hopefully with construction management degrees, formally educated. They're going to come into your organization and they're going to be confronted with folks who perhaps have an informal education, but a deep understanding of the construction business. And this can create a silo. Think about the ethnic or the language divisions that you might have within your organization. Here in California, the workforce is mainly Hispanic. And so they have a Hispanic culture and way of doing things in the field. And that's different often than the executive level of folks in the office. And of course, there's a language barrier as well. If everyone in the field is speaking Spanish and everyone in the office is speaking English, obviously that creates silos. Not only that, but as more and more women come into construction, there can be a silo between men and women in a construction company. You know what it's like when a bunch of guys get together and talk about a project. The atmosphere of that meeting may be different if one or two women are in the meeting also. And so that can create a silo and a division. Not only that, but there can be project divisions in an organization. Think about the different individual projects that you're doing at the moment. Even if it's the same type of work, that can create divisions and silos. Not only that, but if you're a larger company, perhaps you do a variety of different types of work. So you have maybe multifamily or office type construction, healthcare, special projects. Maybe some of the work you do is ground up. Maybe some of it is TIs. And you have different groups that run different types of projects. And perhaps you're divided geographically as well. You're corporately located in one area with different locations in other areas. All of these things create natural silos and divisions in organizations. And before we spend too much time bashing on silos and thinking about how we can bridge the gap between silos, let's spend a little bit of time first thinking about the wisdom of silos. Let's look at the NFL here for a moment, the National Football League. Back in the day, two-way football players were not uncommon. If you know anything about football history, you've probably heard of folks like Jim Thorpe, Red Grange, Sammy Baugh. These guys played both offense and defense and excelled. But these days in the National Football League, it's extremely rare for players to play both ways. Now you either play offense or defense. And in playing offense and defense, you're more than likely to play an extremely specialized position. Let's just think about defense here for the moment. There's three main position groups on the football defense. You've got your defensive line, you've then got your linebackers, and then you've got your defensive backs. And think about the defensive line just for a moment. Even along the line, there is specialization. You've got your nose tackle, for instance, in the middle, who's taking on the guard in the center. He's usually a guy who's going to be, 6'1", maybe 6'2" at the most. He's going to weigh something like, 350, right? And he's going to be absorbing blocks and trying to plug up the middle. The guy on the edge who's rushing the quarterback is probably going to be 6'4", 6'5", closer to maybe 275 to 300 pounds. And they're going to play completely different roles in the defense, even though they're right next to each other. And because football is so complex and competitive and challenging, and it requires a ton of preparation and specific skill, you can see the wisdom in these silos, both between the defense and the offense, and then within the different units. And the same is true in construction, particularly in larger companies. Just think for a moment about a very challenging technical project that you might be working on at the moment that's using expensive equipment. I'm sure that you're glad that you have a specialist who knows how to operate that piece of equipment. And you've invested time and money training them, and you're not just going to throw some fresh PE right out of college with a CM degree on that piece of equipment. And so breaking down into different functions and into different projects allows you to do three things. So there is some wisdom in silos. So let's think about those three things. Number one, it allows people to concentrate. If you wake up every single day knowing that you're going to work on one particular project, there is the advantage of concentration, which leads to higher productivity. Second thing in terms of silos is team consistency. Over the years, if you work with the same teams, either bidding work or planning work or building work, you get to know each other. You get to work well together as teams. And that consistency can lead to higher productivity as well. And then with silos in an organization, it's easier to hold particular individuals accountable. If you have one project manager running a particular project and the project is struggling, you know who to hold accountable. So there is a degree of wisdom in silos. It leads to higher performance. It leads to great safety. It can lead to higher quality and to more speed. But you have to realize that intentionally or unintentionally, these silos can create challenges that hinder the overall effectiveness of the organization. And so that leads me to the second thing that I'd like to explore, which is the danger of silos. Now, when I was a kid, I was born in England, and I wanted to be a professional soccer player. I remember one day my dad asked me, if you're not going to play soccer, what are you going to do? And I replied, like any 10-year-old would, I'll work in a garage, right? I'll just go pump gas somewhere. And what was interesting is I played soccer up until I was about 10. And then one day my dad took me down to the rugby club. And in England, rugby is like the second most popular sport. And I immediately fell in love with the sport, and I never played soccer competitively again. I played rugby all through my middle school years and high school years and a little bit in college. Now, for those of you not familiar with rugby, a team is broken down into two main silos, the backs and the forwards. The forwards are the ones who get in those crazy scrums, right? Fight for the ball and generally give and take most of the physical punishment. Now, I was a fat kid, and fat kids usually play in the forwards. So that's where I ended up when I first started. And what the forward's job is, basically, is to win the ball for the backs. Now, the backs, they're the pretty boys with the nice hair. They're skinny, they're fast, they get all the glory, they get all the girls, and they score all the points. The forwards and the backs, they have different functions, and at times they can have different cultures, and they have different roles and different responsibilities. And if you're not careful, these silos within the rugby team can create divisions, particularly when the team was playing badly. And the same is true in construction. Now, going back to that, what I talked about earlier, you bid work, you plan work, you build work, you bill work. Estimating, project management, the field, billing, safety, equipment management, human resources, IT, all of these different silos, and there is a danger in having all of these silos. The first danger is this: it can create an us versus them mentality. It was interesting. I was chatting with a safety director just recently in a construction company of one of my clients, and he was a little ticked off, shall we say, simply because his message of safety, he felt, was not being fully supported by the people responsible for communicating the message to the field, and therefore the field were kind of blowing him off on some of the things that he saw as important. And this us versus them mentality was having a negative effect on the morale of the organization, not to mention the potential danger of not following the safety requirements. And these silos can create this us versus them mentality where long-term grudges are held, resources are hoarded, communication is refused. And what's even worse is sometimes, you get these divisions within companies where one project team actually gets a kick out of the other project team failing, which is a real shame. We always have to remember that the enemy is not within. My problem is not within. The enemy is not within. We're supposed to work together to win projects and to build them profitably. The other danger of silos is this idea of myopia or short-sightedness. 1.5 billion people in the world are short-sighted. And so therefore distant objects are blurry, but close objects are very clear. And oftentimes with these silos, this short-sightedness or myopia is not intentional. I mean, if you're working on an extremely complex project with a big, with a short deadline, and you've got lots of responsibility, it's natural for you to be focused on what you're doing. But that focus can sometimes keep you from understanding the bigger picture. And if you're a leader in a construction company, you must be clear, or you must be careful not to lose focus on the big picture. And that can be particularly important when you're asked to share resources or make sacrifices for other projects in the organization. And because of this us versus them mentality and this myopia that silos can create, then what can happen is the third danger of silos, and that is missing out on opportunities to improve. One of the things that you have to be able to do in a construction organization is take lessons learned from one project, for instance, and then translate those lessons across the organization. But if there's silos, and we're hoarding information and we're not working together and we're not seeking to understand one another, many times these silos can create situations where we miss out on opportunities to improve. So there is a wisdom and almost a necessity to silos, but there is a great danger in silos as well. So now let's take a look at the third point, how to use teamwork to win the battle against silos. So now we're going to go back to the book. We were breathing hard after running and gunning in the late morning heat with heavy gear, but we had all survived without a scratch. A fellow officer and I smiled and laughed at each other. We had just gotten ourselves into a solid gunfight on the street, hammered the enemy, and brought everyone back unscathed. It was awesome. We were fired up. So Leif Babin returns with his sniper group, and right after he returns, he encounters his commanding officer. So let's go back to the book. But already back at our base was our platoon chief. Chief wasn't happy. He pulled me aside. "What the hell were you guys doing out there?" the chief asked sternly. "What do you mean?" I asked, immediately getting defensive. The chief was a hell of a battlefield leader, extraordinary in a gunfight. With a long career of nearly 20 years, he was the most experienced SEAL in the task unit, and we highly valued his guidance and mentorship. Never one to shy away from a fight, he was courageous and always eager to close with and destroy the enemy. So why now was he critical of us, particularly my leadership on the battlefield? "What are you talking about?" I said. "Why didn't you leave the other SEAL sniper overwatch position in place to cover your movement back here to base?" the chief asked. I thought about that for a moment. My initial defensiveness wore off. He was right. If you remember from the situation, there was 2 SEAL sniper overwatch teams protecting the patrol that went out. Let's go back to the book. "No reason," I replied, understanding that his logic was absolutely correct. I realized my error. I was so focused on our own squad's dilemma, I didn't think to coordinate with the other team, to work together. We absolutely should have. We had used cover and move within my own immediate sniper team, but I had forgotten about the greater team and the support available. We had operated independently, failing to support or help each other. Had we left the other sniper team in place, they would have had an excellent vantage from the high ground and could have covered our movement much of the way as we patrolled through the dangerous streets back to our base. Once at the base, my sniper team could have provided additional cover for the other sniper team as they returned to the base. It was foolishness not to work together. Though we were working in small teams with some distance between us, we weren't on our own. We were all trying to accomplish the same mission. The enemy was out there working against us, all of us. It was essential that we support each other and work together. One element must cover so that the other element could move. My team had gotten lucky this time around, damn lucky. But my chief knew, and I now recognized, that we had taken a needless and foolish risk. We should have utilized every strength and tactical advantage possible against these ruthless enemy fighters occupying Ramadi. The most important tactical advantage we had was working together as a team, always supporting each other. It was a rude awakening for me. I had become so immersed in the details, decision points, and immediate challenges of my own team that I had forgotten about the other team, what they could do for us, and how we might help them. So now, let's look at how to use teamwork to win the battle against silos. And I'm going to give you 10 pointers. And I'd like you to think about each one of these and how you can use and apply them in the leadership of your construction company. Pointer number 1, Above all, you must realize that using teamwork to battle against silos starts with the leadership of the organization. And that means you. If you are in a leadership role, whether it's of the company, whether it's of a division, whether it's of a group or a project, if you have negative silo issues, it's your fault. If you're going to battle against silos in your organization, it cannot be someone's responsibility. It must be yours. Number 2, you must have a clear mission and vision for your company, for each department, and each project. I encourage you to go to episode 10 of Construction Genius and listen to the podcast on how to clarify your company vision and why it's vital to your success. And I'll put a link in the show notes. So what you must do is you must establish and communicate a clear mission and vision, a clear why for everyone in the organization that they can look to help them to make decisions in the midst of the daily battles that they face. And you must use that mission and vision to drive all decisions that you make with regards to allocation of resources, money, talent, and you must commit to communicating that mission and vision internally within teams and externally between teams so that everyone is on the same page. Number 3, and this is a really good one here, map out your organizational structure and develop peer-to-peer relationships. All of these are going to be in the show notes, by the way, so check that out. Think about that old advertising campaign that the military used, an army of one, and that referred to officers, NCOs, and enlisted men. Now think about the way that your organization is structured. Perhaps you have an executive level. You have your senior executives, your C-level folks, your chief operating officer, your CEO, your president. And then right below them, perhaps you have your project executives, and they have peers who are people like your general superintendent and your chief estimator. So you have an executive level. And then below that, you have a middle management level with perhaps your PMs and your superintendents. And perhaps below that, you have a field leadership level with your foremen, and they may be relating to the PMs, they may be interacting with your PEs. But what you need to do is you need to map out that organizational structure and develop peer-to-peer relationships. In other words, get the general superintendent sitting down with the project executive and break bread together. This is absolutely essential. Get to know each other. Because as you develop those peer-to-peer relationships, when the conflicts come and the silos rear their ugly heads, it's much more likely that you're going to be able to overcome those issues and those challenges. But make sure that peer-to-peer relationship is being built. Number 4, ideally, you'd like to establish tours of duty, particularly for aspiring leaders. So in your organization, those basic divisions that you have, for instance, you have your estimating group, your project management group, and your field leadership group. One of my clients does extremely effectively is they allow people to take tours of duty in each area as they're developing themselves as leaders. And one of the reasons they do that is for them to become familiar with the work from different points of view. And when they're familiar with the work from different points of view, then it helps them to have some sympathy and some empathy with folks in terms of the challenges that they're facing in their particular silo. So for instance, if I've spent some time being a project manager and I've also spent some time being a superintendent, then it's going to help me to understand both sides of the puzzle or the equation when issues are being addressed in an organization. So establish those tours of duty for aspiring leaders. Number 5, have the senior leaders show their faces in different places. Take the example of Winston Churchill. One of the things that he was a master of doing during World War II was visiting the troops on the front lines. Now, the troops did not expect him to pick up a gun and start shooting the Germans, but they really appreciated the fact that he came out and he communicated to them his sincere appreciation for their hard work and sacrifice. And if you want to bridge those gaps between the field and the office particularly, get your project executives out of their office, get them in their trucks, out to the job site, get a hard hat on, and go walk the jobs with the guys in the field and show their faces. Number 6, when you're in your executive meetings, allow advocacy, but insist on agreement. So in your executive meetings, you're going to have folks from the estimating side of the business, the project management side, the field side. You must remind every person in the meeting of the greater vision and mission that transcends anything that they're doing on their particular project at that particular time. And the mindset of that leadership group, regardless of position, is that they are a part of a team. They are a team of teams, so to speak. And as a team of teams, they take off their project manager hat and they put on their executive hat. And they think about decisions that benefit the entire business, not just their particular project or their particular issue. And so with that in mind, in the executive meetings, you allow them to advocate for their particular issue or their particular side of the business. But you must come to agreement in those meetings. In other words, if there is disagreement, you must insist on commitment. Let me make sure I'm clear about that. It's okay for people to disagree. You're not looking for consensus. But in those executive meetings, if you want to overcome the silos, you must insist on commitment to the decisions that are made. So in other words, if I'm a project manager or a project executive and we make a call in that meeting that is against what I would like to do, I don't go out and talk to my guys about how the executive team has no idea what they're doing. I present the decision of the executive team as my decision. Regardless if I agree with it or not, I am committed to it because I'm committed to that greater team and I'm committed to the mission and the vision of the organization. Number 7, don't air dirty laundry with outside parties. Now, this is a mistake that sometimes is made in organizations. People talk to vendors or to project partners or to owners about the issues in the organization, silo issues. Never do that. Keep your business internal. If the family's got an issue, don't go talking to other folks about it. Talk about it internally and do everything in your power to deal with your issues internally as opposed to telling tales out of school. Number 8, if you're a leader particularly, watch your personal biases. Let's say you're a guy who started with your bags on back in the day and now you're the CEO or the president, and you have a personal bias towards the field and maybe a particular type of work. And that bias sometimes can cloud your decision-making or cause you to favor one silo over another unnecessarily. Be careful of that. Be careful of those biases that you as a leader hold, which may cause you to favor one silo over another unnecessarily. Number 9, don't allow stepchildren. Okay, now, some jobs are more important than others. Some jobs are more glamorous than others. Some jobs are more profitable than others. But every job, every role, every person is important. Don't allow people to look down on different regions or different areas or different project types. Don't allow that sort of snobbery in your organization. Break through that and make sure that you communicate as a leader that every project has value and every person has value. And then number 10, stay humble. Stay humble. So what does that mean? Number 1, in those executive meetings and between the field and the office, make requests for help. If you need help, ask for help. Number 2, offer help. If you see that someone else needs help, offer them that help. If you have a bit of manpower resource available that could help another guy on a project, offer that help to that person. And then number 3, in light of staying humble, make and accept apologies when necessary. Okay, so those are 10 things that you can do to use teamwork to win the battle against silos. I'm going to take a quick sip of my tea here. I'm back. All right, let's hit the summary here. We're going to go back to the book here. Cover and move is the most fundamental tactic, perhaps the only tactic. Put simply, cover and move means teamwork. All elements within the greater team are crucial and must work together to accomplish the mission, mutually supporting one another for that singular purpose. Departments and groups within the team must break down silos, depend on each other, and understand who depends on them. If they forsake this principle and operate independently or work against each other, the results can be catastrophic to the overall team performance. Within any team, there are divisions that arise. Often when smaller teams within the team get so focused on their immediate tasks, they forget about what others are doing or how they depend on other teams. They may start to compete with one another. And when there are obstacles, animosity and blame develops. This creates friction that inhibits the overall team's performance. It falls on leaders to continually keep perspective on the strategic mission and remind the team that they are part of the greater team and the strategic mission is paramount. Each member of the team is critical to success, though the main effort and supporting efforts must be clearly identified. If the overall team fails, everyone fails, even if a specific member or an element within the team did their job successfully. Pointing fingers and placing blame on others contributes to further dissension between teams and individuals. These individuals and teams must instead find a way to work together, communicate with each other, and mutually support one another. The focus must always be on how to best accomplish the mission. Alternatively, when the team succeeds, everyone within and supporting that team succeeds. Every individual and every team within the larger team gets to share in the success. Accomplishing the strategic mission is the highest priority. Team members, departments, and supporting efforts must always cover and move, help each other, work together, and support each other to win. This principle is integral for any team to achieve victory. So today we covered how to use teamwork to win the battle against silos. And we kicked off by discussing the silos that exist in a construction company. We talked about the wisdom of silos, the danger of silos, and those 10 things that you can do to use teamwork to effectively win the battle against silos. So here's the next step that you can take. You know that leading a construction company is very challenging, and it's common for construction company owners like yourself to struggle with getting each employee contributing equally to your organization's success. And despite your best intentions, it's often tough for you to break down the silos that we talked about here today. And these issues not only create stress and frustration for you, they cost you money. Now, I've worked with construction company owners for over 15 years, and I developed a short assessment which will quickly identify the specific leadership areas you need to work on. Now, I'm going to put the link in the show notes, but I'm going to tell you what the link is where you can go on my website to take the assessment. It's ericanderton.com/construction-leadership-assessment. It's a very awkward URL, but it is in the show notes. I really appreciate you listening today. I'm going to put a link for the book Extreme Ownership in the show notes. Go out and get yourself a copy of the book if you haven't. I encourage you, if you run a construction company, you should read that book and get your leaders to read it as well. It's very practical and straightforward. Also, check out Jocko Willnick's podcast. It's absolutely excellent. And I really appreciate you listening to the show here today. Please share this podcast with other construction leaders. Feel free to leave a review on Apple Podcasts or Google Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts. Give me your feedback. Connect with me on LinkedIn. My name again is Eric Anderton. Thank you for listening to Construction Genius. And go out and take this information and use and apply it in your construction company. Thank you for listening to this episode of Construction Genius. Hope you found that 1% of inspiration to help you in the next few days. If you like the show, please give us a 5-star review on iTunes, share it with other construction leaders who you think would benefit, and always remember that the show is brought to you by Kick-Ass Meetings. I've been working with construction leaders since 2004, teaching them how to run extremely effective problem-solving meetings that gets their people collaborating, taps into their creativity, and to get yourself a free copy of the Kick-Ass Meeting Report, go to www.ericanderton.com/kickassmeetings. Grab yourself that free report, read it, use it in your business. You'll find it extremely useful. And thanks again for listening.